Ain't no walls across the line. There's a rare few who think outside the box together for the crew. To break the equations, not bound to any rule. Exposing to the world the universe is all view. It takes the talent of the craftsman, it takes the mind of the fool, to make the vision realize energy and matter in a duel. To a great, to a duel. The old man, bills was running through his head. Cheryl probably got it hiding under his bed. Penny up to any, making power for days. Don't listen to a word that the straight dope says. Might building batteries that power a ship. Victor comes and talking math, that's the water spiral dip. Sean chucking plasma volts a mile long. Sheila on the video making tone trumpet prongs. Burning, breaking matter, they said it couldn't be done. And to all the people in the chat, I know you're having fun. So it's time to spend your Saturday with the dope and old man bills.
I think energy is far different than what we think it is. It's just none of the definitions really cover what energy really is. They cover parts of energy, what it can be transformed into and stuff like that, but they don't cover what it really is. They don't have a word for it that I know of, unless you say ether. Then you say, okay, well, then that's pretty much everything, right? Everything that has a value that moves, motion, electric, anything like that is all ether. So all of that is energy.
And it's all right. That's where I'm going to agree 100% is that it's potential, and then it falls out of potential into some form of manifestation via disturbance. That's it. Like, that's sort of what it boils down to. I mean, one thing I've been fighting myself on lately too is light, because the more I think about it, the less I kind of want to concede to the idea that when you look up at the sky, that's 20 million years ago at the surface of that star, that's the light that's being absorbed. I don't know how much I buy that anymore. The more and more I think about it, I'm starting to really think about it like the chain tied up to the back of the pickup truck. Sort of how I'm seeing it. But
well, explain a little more since you brought us into this.
Well, yeah, I mean, just in general. I mean, I think that if everything's a shove of the ether, right? Just like anything that's full. So if you have an area full of potential, okay, it's full of potential. It's non-manifest. And if you sit there and you push, right, you just push. Now, everything in that direction and everything surrounding it is affected by that push. So if light is just a disturbance of the ether, which I believe it is, okay, that disturbance is pushing the ether in front of it, which then would have quantum effect in terms of, its manifestation at another location. Because once you disturb the pushing force of the ether, it pushes everything in front of it too, which means that it would not necessarily have a quantifiable speed. It would be immediately transmitted, so to speak. Now, obviously, there's a lot of there are variables here. There's any sort of matter in the way, other energy fields, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, if you're just talking about pure potential and you push that pure potential, the instant it moves at all, it just moved over there. And where it moved over there, it fell into a degree of dispersal. Because it would stay laminar in nature until it became diffuse. It would only become diffuse upon being disrupted.
Okay, so it's like a big chunk of ice on a lake. As soon as you go to one side of the lake and push the ice, the other side of the lake, it pushes against the shore.
Right. Or if you tie a chain to a pickup truck, and the chain's a mile long, and you have somebody holding on to the end, if the pickup truck moves 1 inch, the person that's holding onto the chain is dragged 1 inch. Obviously, there's variables in that. Stretch, blah blah blah. Like, listen, perfect world, perfect scenario. That's what you'd say, right? And that's sort of what I'm saying. And if it was 100 miles long, it would be the same thing. You pulled the chain 1 inch at that point, so it would move 1 inch. Whatever's attached to that chain at the end would move 1 inch.
So let me ask you this: Is there any value that takes away from it when you cross magnetic fields? So as you come in from whatever star you're at and you go into the solar system, every planet that there, is there a value that take away every time a planet comes near that beam of light that's supposed to be coming at you? You know what I mean? For every sun, every planet, thing like that? Or is it when you tapped it on one side, you immediately got the value of everything receiving it?
I mean, that's. I'm thinking about this for 1 second. I'm just
Yeah,
tying
go
it into my
ahead.
own analogy to kind of. Well, no, because okay, so we know that there's this. Okay, this is a complicated question. Okay,
Oh, I
because
know it is. You brought up
right,
light.
right. I mean, this is also the most like I'm like this is a complicated question. We're discussing the most complicated unknown science that the best physicists, in the world have not figured out. So yes, this is a hard question. But if we're to stay true to what I'm saying, and there's a degree of luminosity that occurs in the, we'll call it photonic propagation waveform, okay, of light, emitted light through the ether, and its etheric push. The observer at that point, which would collapse the waveform into particle, right, would be at the point of first interference. At the point of first interference, you'd have a collapse that occurs, but as soon as it passes by, the rest would disturb the initial emission because of the same exact logic that occurs when any luminosity reaches a point of differential interference. It would create turbulence, and that turbulence would actually, deteriorate some, or in some cases, all of that light signal. But that's what we would define as a shadow at that point, right? But you could still have a diffuse. But once it collapses into a non-coherent and non-laminar state of its emission, okay, then it's subject to becoming diffuse. Okay, and through that diffusion, you would have a dispersal of that energy over a much greater area, which would then act to probably knock down a significant amount of the energy and directionality of the original vector. Again, wildly complicated question, off the cuff response, best I could really do.
So I would agree with you that it would be the same value once it gets out of the original solar system it was created in. And I say that because if you think of the solar system has a bubble around it, right? It would first have to interact with that, and that would lessen the value, and then it goes, right? But then again, interaction between anything lining up with it would be like a solar eclipse or something like that, right? So that it would change the light. It would change the value of it, and you wouldn't see the star either way, right? Because when they line up, you don't see them. So I always worry about different lenses, and we don't usually talk about them, but they appear every time that you start putting magnetic fields and electric fields all together, you start to get a lens effect. So if there's a bubble around every solar system, then there's a lens effect around every solar system. Things become bigger or smaller based on that lens effect. They also take away the energy you add to it. So that's kind of what's going on here. But light itself is pretty easy to create. Anytime you take a high voltage field with a very low magnetic field and you put them together, you're going to make light. The more magnetics to put into it, the different colors that come out of it. And it's just a scaling. So
Right.
it goes back to the conversion of field around a planet. A planet has a very low magnetic field.
Well, hold
However,
on. Pause right there, because I'm going to lose this. Okay. What you just said about the refraction, or prismatic refraction, breaking apart light into the rainbow of spectrum of colors,
mhm.
that is proof that it's etheric push. by the way. In my opinion, that is proof that it's etheric push, because it could be one or all depending on how it's refracted, and it's undetermined until that refraction occurs, to break it into the spectrum, the broadband spectrum. And the only thing that could have all in one is something that is only strictly potential, because it is potentially everything or potentially one thing or another, right? Or everything. But it's undetermined until it is refracted. So that is, in my opinion, the proof of light being an etheric push. That's it. Like, it's, to me, it makes total sense. It's probably way more complicated. I could see it in my head, but like, that's not words. So
let me ask you, they keep saying light's a wave, light's a particle. You know what I mean? You're saying it's etheric push, right?
Okay. So light's a wave. So what's its frequency?
Well,
what's white light, which contains all other potentials? What's its frequency?
Hang on.
Because the answer to that is so complicated, because it really couldn't, because it would have to be divisible, by every single other wavelength. It would have to be a number that is divisible by every single other wavelength fractionally in order for it to create a full spectrum of light.
I disagree.
How so?
And just in this way, so you tell me if I'm on the right or wrong level here. High voltage has no light until it interacts with something.
Well, yeah, we could agree about that, sure.
Okay. So, but when it does have a frequency to it. You see, because you have to have your frequency up and your amperage low, that means that you're still getting your frequency through it in your pattern, right? And it's still hitting it. And then when it does hit it and creates a plasma, every band of that plasma has frequency in it.
So let me ask you, right? So every band of the plasma has frequency in it, but that's after manifest. If it's etheric push, and all it is a push of potential, then it's nothing until it interacts. Which means that if you try to measure what its frequency is, you can't, because at time of measure you've interacted with it.
So you're differentiating. There's no light in the darkness until it interacts with the planet, where most people think there's light all the way to the planet.
Correct. And from point A to point B, is really just a matter of, if I move my hand an inch here, anything in that direction of something that could potentially observe it, that push has already occurred.
So hold on, it builds
doesn't
out
need to transverse the fucking universe. you know what I mean? It doesn't need to do that. Like, it pushed, and if it has the potential to be observed in a direct line of sight by an observer, then at that point, that's what you receive, that information.
Okay, hold on. So it's building out just like a scalar would. Scalar would build out around an object and then be nothing, absolutely nothing, until another object comes up, another sphere is put there, then it would pull in that same energy right there, a scalar, right? And then it would activate the second object. That's
Skippy.
Exactly the way it works.
Skippy. Or more simply, like you said, there is no light in the darkness. When you look up at the sky, in between you and the light emission that you're seeing as a star, let's say, in between point A and point B, there is no light.
Mm-hmm.
It is like every other form of electromagnetism, where it doesn't matter until it matters, right? It doesn't matter until it actually interacts with matter. If not for matter, then none of the electromagnetic effects exist. Light sheds none, because it's a push to nothing. So there you go. And you know, like I had that profound realization one time, and honestly, it like actually kind of put me into like some kind of crisis, like trying to get my head around it. But there came a point a few years ago where like I realized there was one light in a room, and the room was mostly kind of dark, but like I could see where the light was shining. And then I realized something. There is no light in this entire room. I'm in a room of darkness, and the only things that are illuminated has nothing to do with the room itself. It has everything to do with where the light is reflecting off. And that was it. That was it. Like that's when I realized I was like, this room is completely dark between point A and point B.
Hmm.
It's lighting the walls and the floor.
That's so interesting. So let's get back to it. Is light a particle? Is it a wave? So we know that there's an interaction that happens first, but in that, after that interaction, right, or while it's happening, does it now shoot down to the planet as a wave, or is it still in that scalar state where it's now everywhere? Because we see blue, you know, when we look up, and it seems like it's all around us, but it's not on us. Or our light spectrum of something based on the, oh my God, based on the mirror effect. As soon as it touches something, then the light changes the color, right? So as it hits it, boom, it brings down blue, but it turns out yellow because of how it reacts to it. Is that right? It's got to be something like that, because there's got to be a reflection in it or a value to what it hits that gives it the color.
Well, what gives it the color is what it's reflecting. So, and this goes back to my, yeah, I always refer back to when we used to talk about it, but it's so long ago, I might as well just say it as if it's new again. But
Mhm.
everything that you observe is actually inverse of the truth of what it is. So everything that it's taking in, utilizing, and absorbing of itself, okay, is not what you're seeing. You're just seeing actually what's being pushed off, right? So that's the deterministic factor of color and its interaction with matter. Because at that point, it's taking all of the etheric push potential, so to speak, if you want to consider it that, and some of it, it's it's creating coherency and then shoving some of it back depending on its makeup. um and that's actually one of the reasons why I was so interested, and I forget the name of the gentleman that you had showed the pictures of, but he was doing some kind of plasma experiment where he was actually splitting the plasma apart, and then it was creating like a rainbow spectrum of it. I forget what that was,
I
but I was like,
remember, yeah.
yeah, I don't remember the guy's name, but you showed it. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I was like, do you understand how significant this is that he's breaking the plasma into a color spectrum? Because that's speaking the volumes of the frequency. Because just like every note is a different frequency, and every, like every color is a different frequency too. And yeah, I think Mike Merrick said it before and whatnot. Is it? Yeah, light is definitely a wave form. That is the etheric push, right? It's a waveform. Does it act like a particle in practical use once the interaction has occurred? Well, I mean, that's been the model. Like that's been the quantum model, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, because there's attributes that it shows once the interactions take place that does have it act like a particle as well. But again, is that what it really is? No, it's only what it is after it interacts.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's quantum physics.
Yeah.
I might not buy all of it, but some of it's pretty good. Some of it's pretty good.
No, because I can see the wave itself, right? When you put out the plasma and stuff like that, so you see the wave, you know the wave's there, and you're able to see it with the different lights that it puts out. Okay, that's
Mhm.
pretty simple. But when it comes into the earth, we're looking at it as it's everywhere, all at once. It's like a providing source until everything reflects back to it. So is it the thing that's reflecting back to it, putting off the wave? It's that interaction that's got to be putting off the wave of the color, not
Oh,
necessarily the source.
absolutely, it's absolutely the interaction. Absolutely, it has nothing to do with the light itself. It's not unless if you modulate the light, which is a form of interaction, that it wouldn't be as a result of the matter interaction as opposed to the light itself. The light itself is just, again, it's just a potential is all it is. And just like any potential, or pressure wave in the potential, or however you want to think about it, like not all waves at the beach are the same, right? Like if you've ever gone out like boogie boarding or surfing or something like that, you know that you go out into the ocean and you're sitting there and you're paddling around with the rollers, and then one that you almost kind of catch, and it's going to be a few minutes before that proper big wave comes in, the one where it's big and you could hook and ride in on it, right? So not all etheric pushes, so to speak, are equal in terms of what they are as they, we want to call it transverse, but it's not really, whatever, from point A to point B, okay? Not all of them are equal in that regard, but they're all equal in the fact that the potential could be split up in the same way. That's why white light is white light, and it'll always react that same exact way. I kind of lost some of the comments, but I just want to throw out limited in the comments. I agree with most of what he's actually saying. He's making a lot of good points, but I kind of lost them. But
I'll put it up for you.
Yeah, well, it was a little bit ago, let's say.
Proving the making of hydrogen, all the elements can be made from hydrogen alone.
Yeah, that one was a good one. And that ties directly back into conversations we had before about plasma and hydrogen and their relationship. Because plasma and hydrogen are, in my opinion, two sides of the same coin. Okay? You have plasma, which is matter like energy, and then you have hydrogen, which is energy like matter. Okay? They both ride that line right in the center. And plasma will always, like, hydrogen will gladly turn into plasma and be returned to a more pure form of energy state. And plasma could return to an energy only state. Plasma could also, as we well know through some of these transmutive processes that we've discussed, plasma could also manifest in the form of hydrogen. Hydrogen is the constituent element of all other elements. Period. End of story. Hard stop. It's the constituent of all other matter. It is the prima materia of elemental, of elements in general. And under the proper conditions, it's my belief that you could turn hydrogen into anything you want.
Isn't that listed on Russell's scale as the first thing?
Dude, that I come up with all my own stuff, and that, I read and I watch and this and that, but like, I don't know anybody's work. I'm just literally a guy that like meditated myself into like some forms of conversation that like I don't even understand how I understand. It's just it.
Oh, never mind then.
I don't know. Yeah, probably. If you said so, I believe you. You're one of my best friends, buddy, and I trust you.
Well, they named it at the top, and then it goes into the S all the way down. And everything else gains an electron or a proton from it, and then it's created, right? So it's one electron, one proton.
Well, right. It's got a valence electron. So that's the precursor to everything, having a single valence electron.
Oh, man. So hold on a minute. Dennis said that he had a breakout from the rod down the center, and which means he should run at least 40 volts through that thing or run AC through it. I'm kind of curious to see if he had it on his page or not. Dennis, if you don't mind, let us know, because I'd love to see it. So I have no doubt that he flipped that field as soon as he brought the voltage up, Because usually the cold energy, we run it at 10 volts, you know what I mean, 15, 20 volts sometimes. As soon as you get beyond that, you might as well have connected the number 2 coil to it because it's going to start discharging. So that's why when I do the energy and I put a bigger pipe in there, it immediately turns the energy from being able to oscillate so fast and make us, you know, what would be known as a static field. It brings it back down to a magnetic field. And it starts creating more magnetism in it because it cannot oscillate and discharge that fast because you're creating too much impedance for it. Even though it's on the inside of the coil and it's not attached to anything, it's still creating impedance because it's part of the mass of the coil because the frequency says it is. And the frequency is just the time it takes to discharge, right? So if you interrupt that frequency by putting it down there, you're interrupting the time for discharge. So it now takes longer. So now you're accumulating the magnetic field inside of there. Instead of shooting it out fast, it shoots it out slow. You get a higher discharge.
Good point. Yep, build capacitance that way. And
I wanted to thank everybody for watching today. If you like this kind of content, we do a live show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on YouTube, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the main channel. The link will be in the description. Please join us, get in the chat, and have some fun. With all that said, hit the music.
The old man will. The old man will. The old man will. The old man builds. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality been stricken from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend.